Welcome to the Central Illinois Business Leaders Podcast, where business owners, thought leaders, and community champions from across Central Illinois come to share their story. The Central Illinois Business Leaders Podcast. Anything less would be uncivilized.
What's up, Central Illinois? I am Derek Hayden. I am here with Garrett Ulmer. We are your hosts for the Central Illinois Business Leaders Podcast. Before we kick it off today, just want to remind you all that we do record our interviews by video. You can find those on YouTube, and you can follow our guests there and get a visual of how this interview goes there as well. So without further ado, let's go ahead and introduce today's guest. Today's guest is a graduate of Greenville University. She is currently the Vice President of Public Relations for the Decatur Chamber Toastmasters. She's a professional certified coach, a conversational intelligence certified coach, and a Shipley certified professional coach, and is the owner of Insider Coaching and Consulting. Central Illinois, please welcome to the show, Ellen Hite. How are you, Ellen?
I'm good. Thanks,
Very
Derek.
good.
That was really good. Yeah.
Well, welcome to the show. I will tell you, I'm glad that Derek hits the intros because that was a mouthful, and we probably would have had to redo that 3 or 4 different times.
I am not the current vice president, but a past vice president.
Past vice president. Okay.
Gotcha.
I'll update
Toastmasters.
the intro for next time.
Okay.
Awesome, Ellen. Well, what we'll do is we'll kick it over to Garrett, and he will get we'll try to get a better idea of who Ellen is through our speed round.
Yep. So, Ellen, we've got 6 questions in under 60 seconds. It's for our audience, listeners and viewers, to kind of get a better idea of who you are before we kind of dive into your story and get into all of that stuff. So are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. So your first concert.
Seals and Croft.
Okay.
Seals and Croft.
Favorite movie.
Inception.
Favorite ice cream flavor.
Vanilla with caramel.
All right. iPhone or Android.
iPhone.
Favorite social media platform.
LinkedIn.
And why Central Illinois?
Born and raised. It's who I am.
Okay.
There you go.
Good
Yep.
answers.
Yep. Awesome. Well, thank you, Ellen. What we'd like to do now, Ellen, if you could give our listeners and viewers a quick history of who you are, where you came from, how you got to where you are today. Tell us a little bit about your business, Insider Coaching and Consulting. I know that was a mouthful, but just you take it and run with it. Tell us who you are and how you got to where you are now.
Well, I think I'm most proud of who I've become.
Okay.
And I was born and raised on a dairy farm in central South Illinois by Effingham, Sigel.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So hard work on a
Yeah.
dairy farm has always been one of my great habits. And I think who I've become in, going through college, I had to beg my dad. He had an 8th grade education.
Okay.
So I had to beg my dad to go to college at Lakeland to pay the first year tuition, and I paid the second. So
Okay.
I think, going through life, you know where you're headed. It's kind of an inside place for you that you know that this is what you want out of life. And I wanted an education, and that was something that was very important to me. The farm was important to my dad and family and, great family life, but it was not my, I wanted more than that. I wanted an education, and I'm the only one of 6 with a college education.
All right.
Cool.
That graduated. Yeah.
Awesome.
So you had more questions. Let me tell you a little bit about coaching and how I got to be a coach, if that's okay.
That's
Yeah,
perfect.
absolutely.
All right. I was in insurance with my husband for 12 years, an owner,
Okay.
and I was commercial lines. So I took care of all of the commercial lines for a small, medium, large business. And they would come to me, trust me, here's a blank check, tell me what I need, and let me know how much, basically.
Mhm.
Small town. And so I noticed that they would come in and they would chat and they would have lots of questions about management. They'd have questions about their staff, office staff or their work staff. And I realized that they didn't, that was a void in a small medium business that didn't have an outlet. They didn't have an expert in consulting or coaching. So that was my first kind of inclination. And then many years ago, I interviewed at Milliken for an administrative job in the education department. And I didn't get the job, but what I did get was a compliment and one of those life words from people, from, a mentor or a professional. And they said, you would be a great life or business coach. And I didn't even know what it was. So I looked it up. I checked in with family, my kids, my husband, and said, have you ever heard of that? And have you, is that, and my son had a coach. So I thought, that's who I am. So I pursued getting certified and getting it through credentialed through International Coach Federation. And that's part of that journey of, organizational leadership from Greenville, and completed that in 2015.
Cool. All right.
I went back and my kids and my grandkids attended my graduation. And it was something that I wanted to complete, and that I wanted to have my own business and, be that professional in business and in serving the community and serving other arenas that I've served in the last 15 years as a coach.
Awesome.
Very cool.
So for a client that is how does a client reach out to you, and what do you do for that client once they get in touch with you? I think that'd be a great way to start.
Several ways. I mean, obviously phone call, LinkedIn, any kind of communication, email, but a lot of times some of the needs that business owners have: stress management, time and energy management, making decisions, merging, selling, buying, all of those fall into an executive coach or professional coach or leadership development coach for that business owner personally, and then even doing some leadership courses or some coach training or some group coaching with the staff or through sales, whatever the need is.
Very cool. So do you work with teams, or is it typically individuals, or both?
I've done both. Yeah.
Okay.
I think probably my one-on-one executive coaching is probably what I enjoy the most. That usually leads to a group coaching or a staff, depending on, again, the needs that are assessed from our meetings that we have.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
What size of business do you see yourself typically working with? Does it range in all sizes, or where do you feel like you can have the biggest impact?
A professional coach is a coach that partners with clients for thought-provoking process, for creativity, decision-making ability, and inspirational, to meet the success and the personal professional success. So I have a variety. I have been a coach with CEOs, the C-suite arenas. I've worked in nonprofits. I worked in realtors. I've worked a lot in realty. I've worked in government. I've worked in community leadership. So a variety. And now I'm doing some part-time work with the military with Shipley coaching. Yeah.
Oh, cool. Very cool.
Awesome.
So it sounds like executive coaching is where your primary focus or love or passion is. So if I'm an executive coming to you and I want some coaching, what does the process look like when I first reach out to Ellen and say, hey, I need some leadership coaching? How does that look? How does that look like? How do you start that process?
Based on what the needs are, like where do you want to go? How do you want to get there?
Yeah.
What are the ways to get there? And then the meaning behind that, the value behind that is where I start. And, if you're wanting a coach, then you're wanting to succeed and you're wanting to be a leader in what you do.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yes.
So, what are those leadership qualities that you have? What are your values that you give? how are you using your time and energy management? How many hours a day? I would ask, like, one of my questions, how many hours a day would you say that you are distracted in thinking other things besides what you should be doing?
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
So the ROI in coaching is hours. If you're not spending time with that staff member or another sales leader or another, partner, whatever it is, and if you're not having to spend time that, makes you frustrated and steals your energy and steals your vision, steals success, your time to focus, then that's the ROI of coaching. It's taking away those hours that you would spend being frustrated or feeling like you're off focus or you're really not doing what you're supposed to be doing every day. Then I come in and we dissect some of those areas so that you can think differently, think creatively, and move forward in how you're processing decisions or how you are looking at motivation, whatever it is.
So it sounds like a lot of what you do has to do with organization.
Organizational leadership was my main focus in college and doing that. And yes, so you can change a culture, your office culture. There's a book, Peter Block. It's called Community, and he dissects the word community. And there's two forms of that in an organization or a community, right? And the word belonging. So to belong is to relate to and be a part of something. It's that environment that you work in. And then it's being an owner of that. We have to feel like we're part of that culture, part of the organization. So I can do, leadership top down first, and then we go to whether it's administration or we look at teams. But if they feel a part of that community, then things, it's kind of like a well-oiled machine. You can, it's feeling like you're a part of, because community says I trust, community says I communicate, community says I can think and create. So if you can trust someone, that's a relationship, right?
Mm-hmm.
And part of my neuroscience coaching that I love and have been drawn to is understanding how you communicate with people. There's a law of requisite variety. It's from Ross Ashby, and his theory is that you can deal with diversity and problems and solutions by being the most agile in conversation. And so being the most agile in conversation is listening. It's using those sensory systems and, neuroscience and understanding how you are actually processing, are you hearing what you're hearing? And are you listening on a level 1, a level 2, or level 3? And level 1 would be hearing the words. And that's also, I want to inform, I want to tell you what to do.
Mm-hmm.
Level 2 would be persuade. And then level 3 is actually connecting with that person for a better communication. So organization, a community, is really about connecting as one and having both sides have a part of or feeling a part of to create a feeling a part of nurturing and building together. Yeah.
Very cool. Man, that is deep, Ellen, but it is very interesting.
We dive in fast, Derek.
That's super interesting.
Go right there.
No,
so it sounds like to me whenever you first initially start meeting with an individual or a group, that there's going to be a very diagnostic approach of getting to understand them, their daily functions, their habits. So I'm assuming, do you start off the process with every individual the same, with kind of the same list of setup of questions just to get to understand them and then move from there?
I do have several business models and illustrations that I work from, just because having a visual and having a process is important. Working with the military, it's about, understanding what do you want? And it's the mental, like, how are you thinking? What are you thinking from? And then, how are you mastering that from a physical quadrant place? And then also, what are the wins? what is your goal for a win? And just saying, you know, what do you want? How are you going to get there? One of the questions I ask is, how will you know that you're going to get there? How will you know when you are there? So that's part of that neurochemicals, like there, if you know, rather than, you know, just working it from the other side, you already know. And that's the side I start from. You know, how will you know when you've gotten there? And then we look at, well, what are you going to think from? What are you going to say? What will people say about that? What will you feel from? What are the motivations? You know, what are the drivers that are connected to that? So then everything, you know, kind of goes backwards. But you celebrate. Well, what will you do when you do get there? How will you celebrate it? So in the brain, it's already there. Your brain is already experiencing the win.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you're a good problem solver, is what it sounds like.
Yes. I mean, that's what I do. It's not a problem to be solved. It's a place to think from that's different, and to create it, to make it something that's new.
Yeah.
Very good. You know, if you look at it from a negative view, appreciative inquiry is taking a negative space and making it positive. And that's also part of the coaching process, that we change everything from a negative into a positive, because our brain wants to think positive. It wants to work constantly to think positive. It's always trying to solve that place, and you've got to follow along. And so you can use several tools. I use several tools in neuroscience coaching. It's about, one is a cross association that with the military coaching. It was, you know, it's drive behavior, drive results. So if you can change a behavior, you can change your attitude, you know, you can change that emotion that drives it and the process, then that cross association of connecting it with something you do like connects with that neural feedback loop that makes it easier. So that's one of the, you know, just a technique. Yeah.
Very cool. Well, that sounds like our last guest, their show has not been produced yet, but we were kind of talking about motivational factors, and one of the terms that they use is, instead of saying I can't, say how can I, turning it from a negative to the positive and finding a way to make your dream or your goal happen. Instead of limiting yourself up front, saying I can't do that, saying, well, how can I do it? How can I accomplish it?
Yes. What questions are discovery? How questions are action? Daniel Pink, have you ever heard of the book Drive? Daniel Pink's book of Drive. And he looks at mastery. How do you get people motivated to do something? You know, it's perfecting something. I want to get better at this. I want to get better at leadership. I want to get better at more sales. I want to get better at this. And that's relationships. But some people, in different personality assessment, we do that too. You know, in coaching, that you look at relationships and what kind of people, where do they think from? You know, I'm more of a process thinker. I am very relational, but I like the process. I like getting to the end and solving it. Right. So the relationship autonomy was another one in his book, you know, a place of motivation. So autonomy, you know, being able to have choices. So let's look at this arena, or let's look at this process and how to get what you want. Yeah. And so the meaning behind that, the values that we create, everything within us connects in our brain, our head brain, heart brain, gut brain, we all connect. And so if you can have a cohesive leadership place to think from and to decide from, then everything within you is going to move forward and move toward that goal. Yeah.
Great.
Earlier, when I were asking you the speed questions, you mentioned your favorite social media platform was LinkedIn. Could you dive a little deeper into that and kind of give us an idea of why you like LinkedIn so much?
I like LinkedIn because it gives me 4 areas of perception. It gives the perception of the person that posts, has the post. It gives me a perception of, with a variety of information. It gives me a perception, the second area would be from a person that's receiving or a person that actually was in it. And then like a fly on the wall perception, like that third party person. And then it also, I like it, the systems perception. So you can, you hear the stories of how it changed a system or a culture, or, everything, the organization. So it goes to me, it goes all four at the same time. It's kind of a multidimensional space and information that you can think from and apply from. It's not just, hey, here's my family, which is important, but it's like, here's what we did this weekend on a Facebook maybe, or, something.
Sure.
But LinkedIn, I see such a variety and I learn from it. So I'm a constant learner. So I think LinkedIn gives those four perceptions that satisfy me and get me excited about.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Well, I'm right there with you. LinkedIn's my favorite as well. And not to say I don't spend a little time on Facebook, but I feel like Facebook is kind of the mindless, like you said, scrolling to see what everybody's done this weekend, what their kids are up to.
It's informative and fun, but
Yeah.
LinkedIn kind of has that edge of learning and
Exactly.
shifting for me.
I agree. So I'm looking at your website right now, Ellen, and I'm looking at some of the subject matter, some of the coaching you do, and time management sticks out to me. And the reason I say that is I have a little bit of a wandering mind, and I tend to not be able to focus. I'll come up with an idea, and instead of focusing on the task that I've got in front of me, I'm like, oh, I gotta go do this. And all of a sudden, at the end of the day, I'm like, well, I got nothing done because I never finished up a project that I was working on. But tell us a little bit about time management coaching.
Well, I would look at Derek in those spaces of, first of all, people that are leaders that are very motivated have a lot of ideas. Right? It's important.
Sure.
It's important to have a lot of ideas, and those are the the brilliant thinkers of the world.
That makes me feel a little better then.
Yeah, it's just allowing yourself, okay, what is important to me today? What's important to me by the end of the week? What's most important to me by the end of the month? So outlining those goals and setting those goals as a motivation, I would look at, there's levels of thought. So we have, your environment where you think from, you have your skill set, then you have the choices that you make, and you have a, place from identity. So, and values and identity. So what, if we looked at an identity from a brilliant thinker leader, what is the identity that you really want to accomplish? What's speaking to you the most that's going to, again, connect with every part of you, so that it's not here, it's not scattered, it's really a more focused, and I bring it in to help you understand, or the leader understand, that this is very valuable to me. And so if you have a value, then you have a motivation. So the wandering, the ideas are just going to get put on paper. They're not going to have a thought process time element to it. They would just be, oh, I'm going to write this down, and someday I want to do that. But right now, this is important to me because, and we'd fill in those blanks.
Right.
And we'd kind of make it a little more narrow, but we go deep in why, we diversify and converge into places that have importance to you, or to that leader, to that client.
So prioritizing the most important tasks for that individuals.
Right. And understanding, the motivation behind it is mine. It's about identity and motivation. So it's prioritizing, it's time, energy, but it's also understanding the value behind it. If you don't know the values, if you don't know the identity push, the motivation, it's not going to make a difference. You're going to do it for a week, 2 weeks, maybe a month. Yeah.
Right.
I would like to think that probably time management for most leaders, or just business individuals in general, probably has to be a main focus for a lot, because, whether you're just starting out in business, own your own business, whatever you're trying to accomplish, is as you continue to grow and get busier, it gets harder to keep the main thing sometimes. You've got, like Derek said, the ideas. I always know when he's been thinking, he's like, hey, you've got to come talk to me. Got to check this out. And I know his brain's going a million different directions, which is great because we're kind of an ebb and flow with each other as far as that goes. But it is time management. I feel like it's probably one of the hardest things for a lot of individuals to get under control. There's so many distractions in the world today. It's easy to jump on Facebook and I'm only going to take 5 minutes to cure my brain here just to relax. Before you know it, you're an hour in. And you're like, whoa, what did I do? Now you've got the idea. And then you're back to, you're killed 3 hours. Like, I need to get this 10-minute task done. So I think time management's a big one for most individuals.
For sure.
So Garrett, in that place, in that environment, what is it that is motivating you to stay on that social media platform?
Sure.
What's the emotion? What's the neurochemical? Because we actually get addicted to the neurochemical that's released. It could be dopamine, kind of a reward.
Yeah.
Place. Is it oxytocin? Is it serotonin? What is it that that would be part of kind of that underlying place of time management? Is understanding what it is, that emotion or that neurochemical that's being released that you want to.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think post-pandemic leadership also is different. We have to look at things differently. Stress management within that post-pandemic leadership.
Yeah.
This is a launch season. We're coming out of making excuses, looking at things differently. We're coming out of a pandemic that says, I want to do this. It's kind of this new launch space from that stress and time. And, we've had to occupy our time within the pandemic with something because we couldn't go anywhere.
Yeah.
Couldn't do things. So we have really reprogrammed our brain to do something different. And so now it's the proper time. It's the best time to look at things from an angle of, gosh, all right, this is what I want to do. This excites me. This is important to me. Why is it important? What is the emotion behind it? The motivation. Emotion is motivation.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
What's the energy? Any type of time management, it's an energy within that we find on the motivation side of making a difference and making a change.
Absolutely. Yeah, I will say that I've gotten a little better at time management. I'm still nowhere near where I should be. The one thing that I have found that helps me, so the first thing I do in the morning after I get up is I try to open up my computer and there's one task that I need to complete. So the most important thing that I have to do all day, whether it be contacting a customer or, getting application together or something, whatever I know that I have to do that day, that's the first thing that I do at 5 a.m. And I get that done. And then the rest of the day, I know I can, if I do have an idea, I can run with it. So that's one thing that's helped me is what's that one thing that's the most important to me in my career or my family or whatever happens to be that day. And I get that done, try to get that done first thing in the morning. And then I can, if I do wander, I just let it wander because sometimes one or two of my ideas work. So
yeah. And I also found that if you look at something that you don't want to do and you change the mental perception of it, that you do want it and change it into positive, everything within you says this isn't a problem anymore.
Yep.
It's something that I want to do. So you've changed the storyline. You've changed the feedback loop. You changed the emotion. You've changed the energy into something you do want to do. So therefore it looks at like, this is pleasant for me. This is something enjoyable. And that this is who I am.
Yep.
Right.
Goes back to the I can't to how can I.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's all a mentality.
It is. It really is. So that's part of the neuroscience coaching. That's part of leading with every part of you. So yeah.
Very cool. Well, Ellen, we are getting near on time. I think we might got 2 or 3 minutes left. Is there any tips, tricks, strategies for leaders out there listening that you would want to leave them with, that something maybe they can work on their own, or something that could maybe improve their daily habits?
A couple of things. One, my motto is believing in people and in what they do is imperative, not only as a professional coach, but as a human being. So it's believing in people. And number two is ask more open-ended questions in your work, in your family life. Instead of assuming or instead of the same answer, look at an open-ended question. How would you see that differently? What kind of steps would it take to make it better? So you ask the what questions and the how questions, and the closed-ended, so it's not just a one answer thing. It comes from within, and it really makes our brain think different. So making your brain think different is what I'm all about.
There you go.
That's great.
Well, I have to ask you, Ellen, have you ever heard of Chris Voss? Has that name ring? So
No,
Chris
that I know of.
Voss, he is the lead FBI hostage negotiator. And he has created basically a business coaching business where he consults people on how to utilize. Obviously, business leaders aren't hostage negotiators, but it's how to train people to talk and how to get information from them and be more consultative. And it just from the questions you just asked, the how and what questions, that's one of the tactics that he teaches is, utilize that to gain more information.
Mm-hmm.
So it was interesting because a lot of the stuff that you're talking about, and Garrett and I have studied his techniques a little bit, and I know as you're talking, I was like, man, that's exactly in line with what he teaches.
Funny. I'm thinking the exact same thing. I'm like, oh,
wow.
yeah. This all sounds extremely familiar.
Yes, you'll have to look him up, Ellen. It's Chris Voss, and his book name is Never Split the Difference.
Nice. I will.
Yes. Cool.
Yes.
Well, before we go, Ellen, what is your phone number? What's some of your contact information? I know our loyal listeners are going to want to talk to you a little bit. How can they get a hold of you?
Phone is 217-201-2301, and Ellen at insidercoaching.com. And that's my website also.
Awesome. And obviously LinkedIn is another preferred method, it sounds like, too.
Yes. And I just want to tell you guys, thank you for what you're doing in stepping up the community of business leaders in Central Illinois. You should be so proud of who you are and celebrate who you are in the community. Really, thank you for taking the time, the ideas that you have, and the energy that you have, the time that you have, and promoting Central Illinois and the leaders within. Thank you for that.
Well, thank you very much, Ellen. That means a lot to us.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for jumping on here with us today. It's been great talking with you.
Anytime.
Yep. And all you loyal listeners out there, make sure you're subscribing to the CIBL podcast on whatever platform you consume podcasts on. iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, we're on all of them. Also, while you're there, please leave us a review. You can also follow us on LinkedIn and Facebook and engage with our guests there as well. Ellen, until next time, you've officially been civilized.
Yes.
Central Illinois. We'll catch you on the next episode.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Central Illinois Business Leaders Podcast. You can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/CIBL Podcast. You can also follow us on LinkedIn. Don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review. It's the civilized thing to do.